We continue to get reaction to President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech last night. I'm now joined by DA leader John Steenhuisen. John, a very good morning to you. Thank you for your time. As we are getting all sorts of views and comments regarding the president's announcement of a lockdown level 3. You as the DA have spoken about the acquisition and the provision of the readily available coronavirus vaccine as a pivotal point here that needs to be, explored in greater depth and speed.
Indeed, Mpho, and you're absolutely right. And for me, that was one of the key takeouts from the president's address to the nation yesterday. We all accept that we're in the midst of a second wave and we've got to do all that we can to combat it. But there are two very important questions that need to be asked. The president's speech last night said that now we can only expect the vaccine in the second quarter of 2021. This while many other countries have managed and merged lockdowns with a rollout of the vaccine. And where every country in the European Union has now received their allocation of the vaccine, but also countries like Costa Rica, Chile, Mexico, who are in the same neighborhood socioeconomically as South Africa, have started mass vaccine rollouts in their countries. And the big question we have to be asking ourselves is, why are we sitting here having to go into a lockdown and a ban, which are the only tools government has now, and only expecting the first batch of vaccine in the second quarter of next year, and then even then only enough for 10% of the population. Most of those other countries would have long completed the rollouts of the vaccine then. The second point is that whilst there's obviously a link between alcohol and trauma, and that's an undeniable link, what was absent last night was any form of bridging finance or interim relief for those companies that have been shut down at the stroke of a pen by the president yesterday evening. The hospitality industry, tourism industry, the liquor industry are all big employers in South Africa. Many people have poured their life savings into building these businesses up. And at the stroke of a pen last night, essentially, they were significantly curtailed. I would have expected that there would have been some announcement of a financial relief package, particularly for those industries, to tide them over to the 15th of January without them letting their employees go. Those, for me, were the key concerns out of yesterday's speech.
During the level 3, from the beginning of June this year to mid-August, we heard the president speaking about travel. And this time around, no interprovincial travel, details on that and the restrictions on travel were not announced there. What is your view on that aspect?
Well, I think that would be a mistake to limit interprovincial travel. We've got to keep the economy moving. We've got to get people moving. Obviously, provided people are practicing the various protocols, using masks, sanitation and the like, transportation should not be a problem. Remember, we've also got to get goods and services around the country as quickly as possible. But of course, the big thing is we've got to wait to see the regulations and to go through them. And once those are published, they provide the greater clarity in terms of what is going to be required. But here's the thing, Paul, I think one of the big things the president could have announced last night, given the fact that citizens have been asked to sacrifice so much, I think government should have agreed to sacrifice some of its pet projects and redirect that money immediately if the COVID-19 is the single biggest threat facing South Africa. Why are we spending billions of rand bailing out SAA, Denel, all these state and entities? Surely an emergency appropriation could be brought to the floor of Parliament, and we could redirect that money to do two things. One, to expedite the acquisition and rollout of a vaccine, and two, to bolster the economic relief packages, particularly for employees and others and business owners during this time. Do we really need an airline? Do we really need to save 1,140 jobs when we could be saving hundreds of thousands of jobs around South Africa? And I think these are the questions that we have to ask. If this is as serious as government is saying it is, then surely behavior has to be adjusted, not only by citizens, but also by government.
Lockdowns and bans, John, have never been, you've never, as a party, really been supportive of them, speaking about saving the economy and criticized quite heavily during certain times for wanting to prioritize the economy over the health of citizens. What are your views on enforcing this lockdown level 3 and bans as we've seen throughout the course of the year?
Sure. So right from the beginning, we've said it's about balancing lives and livelihoods. I mean, you've got to get that balance right. It's not an either or, it's an and. You've got to manage both. And that's been our position right through it, which is why we supported the initial lockdown, because we've got to go back then and remember what the president told us. The president said to us that we need to go into a lockdown to prepare the hospital capacity to deal with the spikes that may occur, given the fact that this virus could be with us for 18 to 24 months. And I think one of the questions we have to ask ourselves, we've now been in 9 months of hard lockdown, and we're now in a second spike. And to my mind, the hospital capacity in this wave looks worse than it was in the first wave. So how much has been done to improve hospital capacity, which is why you lock down? So lockdowns have a very short usefulness. The efficacy is very short term. It allows you a breathing space to prepare yourself to deal with spikes that come later. Lockdowns and bans cannot be a 24-month strategy, because at the end of those 24 months, we're going to have no economy left. We're going to have massive joblessness and rampant poverty. And I think it's important at this point to say that poverty is actually the biggest killer in South Africa. It underlies our massively high HIV/AIDS burden. It underlies our TB burden, and a lot of the malnutrition, infant mortality, starvation is linked directly to poverty. And to combat poverty, you need to have a working economy that keeps people working. So there is a tie between the functioning economy and people's lives and health. More so by the fact that the public healthcare system is underpinned by the taxes and revenue that government receives from businesses within the economy. So it is a delicate balancing act, and I accept that it is not an exact science. And in many instances, the president and his team are flying blind. But we've got to add more to our arsenal now than just bans and lockdowns. We've got to be able to get our hands on this vaccine, get it rolled out firstly to our frontline healthcare responders, the elderly and our teachers, and so that we can start from early next year ensuring that they are safe, and then having a comprehensive rollout plan for next year. We can do it. We can throw money at the problem. We've got the money to throw at the problem, but it's going to mean that government has to give up on its obsession with its pet projects of bailing out state-owned entities. Surely our health of our citizens is more important than a vanity project like an airline.
John, very quickly, some critics have also weighed in on the views of opposition parties like yourself. One, Dr. Stembile Mbete on Twitter, saying that political parties don't understand the issues involved in vaccine procurement and distribution, saying that opposition parties don't seem to have the basic knowledge to hold government accountable. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that he should stick to medicine. I'll stick to politics. Here's the truth of the matter. Belgium, Canada, Chile, Costa Rica, Cyprus, Greece, Mexico, Israel, every country in the EU has access to the vaccine. We're sitting in South Africa, a relatively, on the African continent terms, developed economy, and we don't have the vaccine. It's as simple as that. While we were banning roast chickens, telling South Africans what they could wear, how they had to wear it, where they could go, etc., these other countries, and there are hundreds of them around the world, we're preparing to acknowledge a vaccine to be able to roll it out as quickly as possible. There are now 4 vaccines available internationally. There's the Pfizer in biotech, the Moderna, the Sputnik, and the Sinopharm. We don't even know which one government's decided upon for South Africa. We don't know what date it's getting here. We don't know how much we will be receiving. And we certainly have not seen any comprehensive rollout program, as we've seen with polio, measles, and the like. These are complex programs. So with respect to the good doctor, I think that he should that he should acknowledge the fact that as opposition parties, we have a right to be asking these questions, particularly given the fact that other countries seem to be way ahead of us, and to be asking the questions about how we missed those first two payments, and why is the government relying on the Solidarity Fund to pay for it when they've got billions of rands that they're about to spend on vanity projects. And when the majority of South Africans in the city, in this country, the only time they'll ever see South African Airways is when it flies over their informal settlement or their housing estate. So I think that it's about prioritization, and these are the questions we have to ask. We have to ask the doctor as well why this government has not procured enough oxygen, why the PPE shortages ran out, and why there's been so much corruption. That's our job as an opposition. And as I've said, we've put on the table workable alternatives at every step of the way. Here's a workable alternative. Scrap SAA bailout, scrap the Denel bailout, scrap the Alex Core bailout, and let's prioritize our citizens' health first.
Very well. Let's leave it there for now. The DA's John Steenhuisen weighing in on the latest announcement by the President of a lockdown level 3.